Awesome. Hey, thanks everybody for jumping on. We're gonna have some fun today covering how do we keep our sanity? I'll do some demos as well, and we'll hopefully leave a little bit smarter, maybe a little more confident about what's coming on next. So let me share some slides because
All right.
slides are the way I communicate with normal people, almost with family as well. Let's see.
You say slides for the family?
Yeah, whatever. It's my love language. So that's how I communicate slides. It's all good. So yeah, we'll talk about this. So I'm in our product and engineering organization. I lead product and engineering for Go and Flutter and Dart, also developer relations, global ecosystem like GDGs and GDE programs, all of our technical writing, our documentation for cloud, and open source at Google's on this team. So kind of just lead developer experience for Google Cloud, which is a ton of fun. So yeah, I guess first question for everybody to think about is, I don't know, we okay on AI on some stuff? Seems like if you look at the numbers, almost everybody in some recent surveys say they're using some kind of AI tool weekly. I'd like to meet that 4%. It's okay. Be a rebel. It's not a big deal. 59% are using agents at work in some way. I think that's interesting. And 80% are seeing, I'm not just using this stuff, I'm probably doing some better work because of it. There's caveats there, but for the most part, it feels like we're not where we were a few years ago where it was easy to go, these tools are terrible, or I just hate this stuff. And you still may hate it, but you're also seeing some utility. I think that's most people. But, it's pretty fair. Let's be honest with ourselves. There's a lot of open questions, right? What the heck is my job now? Like, what am I supposed to do now? Am I just a review monkey who looks over code that AI produces? Am I supposed to write this stuff anymore? And is this all slop, or is there good quality here? How do I maintain quality with this sort of code? Because I'm still accountable for it. It doesn't matter who produced it. I'm on the hook for it. Do I even have the systems and the skills and the talents to do AI well? Like, what am I supposed to even know to be good at this stuff? And how do I troubleshoot non-deterministic systems that can literally give me different answers to the same question? What am I supposed to do with that? And okay, I have to learn a bunch of new patterns. Are the application architecture patterns the same? Do I have to do infrastructure differently? My fear could be hallucinations. Gosh, I don't want to just have this AI be a confident liar. I want it to be giving me things that I can trust, whether that's function methods, whether that's, answers to technical questions. How do I add guardrails? How do I protect myself? When and where do I do human oversight? Can I just trust certain things all the way through to production? Or at what points do I need to add myself to the mix? And frankly, is AI taking all the fun stuff? Like, many of us, if you're like me, you joined this field because you liked seeing your ideas turn into something quickly with software. Like, there's a magic feeling that first time you compiled something and saw like a window pop up, or a terminal if you're really loving terminals, or a web page, and you're like, wow, I made that. Like, that's my stuff on there. That's awesome. Most of us got into this because we like building. Are we builders now? Are we just auditors? And is that fun? Is that going to be any good? So let's talk about that today. Let's talk a little bit about what's it going to mean? How do we thrive? How do we not just survive right now? How do we put ourselves in a driver's seat? Because I think we have to decide. You're either going to wait for AI to happen to you and wait for your boss to change your job, or wait for the industry to force you to do something, or you're going to happen to AI. You are going to say, I'm going to remake this in the way I want it to be. I'm going to kind of shape the way that this stuff works. So I thought about some do's and don'ts. How do we think about, how do we find success now? How do we make success in this world and not just feel like we're victims of circumstance or the next model drop, or hope our boss doesn't change our job? That's a soft position for us. That puts us on our back heel. We want to be in command of this. So what's it look like to be in command at this point in our career? So, look, I'd say the first do is I think you got to throw away certain assumptions that we've all been carrying around. We all have them. And so what are some of those? Well, I'm a front-end dev. I'm a back-end dev. I do mobile. I do web. I'm an engineer. I'm a UX person. I'm a program manager. Stop that. Like, sure, have expertise. Super important. But all of us can cover a lot of interesting domains now. Like, I'm pretty terrible at front ends, but I can tack a pretty good web interface on my software now. That's pretty amazing. I don't have to wait for a designer. I'm, a PM at times, but there's also times where now I can feel confident doing testing. I can do other components. I'm terrified of Android, and I'm building Android stuff in Google AI Studio now because I can. So how do we start to not just say I'm in this pigeonholed stack and I just do front ends? How do we just say, sure, I'm going to be T-shaped. I'm going to be good at, I'm going to be functional at a few things. I'm going to be deep in something, but don't be I-shaped. I-shaped isn't the best place to be right now. Same with languages. Oof, look, I could ask many of you what community you identify with, and you might be like, I'm a .NET dev, I'm a Java dev, I'm ride or die on Python. Like, live your life. None of those are bad. But in a lot of cases, that's a syntax choice now. Like I just, for fun today, was building, and I don't know how to do it, but I was using my coding tool to build a front end and back end in Dart and Flutter. I mean, I run those languages now, so I'm trying to be better about using them. But like, I'm not a Dart guy. So, but that doesn't matter. I can do it immediately. Now, do I understand it? Can I write it from scratch? Of course not. But am I able to look through code and now start to recognize it and understand practices? Yeah. So all of a sudden, the value of just being like, I am unbelievable at Java, there's value there, no doubt about it. But that's not as deep of a moat as it used to be. And frankly, if you're like, gosh, I wish I could do some really cool stuff with Go. It seems like an awesome language, but hey, we're a .NET shop. It doesn't matter. I don't even care if you don't know Go. You should be putting Go in prod. Like it is a different world. We got to think differently about some of those assumptions. I love this one. Look, I mean, I don't know. James and I, like, we're not Gen Alpha here. Like we've seen some stuff. We have some gray hair. And so how did we start projects before? Well, you typically did. You read some docs, you did a tutorial, you went to a 2-day class, you kind of had to learn a bunch of stuff. You had to know everything to do anything. Don't anymore. So all of a sudden the assumptions are, I have an idea, let me go run with it. Even if it's with a cloud I haven't used before, a database I haven't used, a framework, all of a sudden I can just start building. And that assumption I have to do all this upfront learning before I can even take the first step is negated. That's not true anymore. That's pretty exciting. And then look, there's an assumption that code generation is like, that's the killer use case for AI when you're doing software. Kind of, it's great. AI does a lot more than that. I mean, as you start thinking of doing reviews and security reviews and code reviews, you think about applying threat simulation to try to find problems in your code. You think of code understanding. Gosh, you have this 1,000,000-line code base from some person who just retired and ran out the door. Old days, that was 2 months of just spelunking code, figuring out how it works. I can get a full interactive HTML overview in 10 minutes. Like, that's unbelievable. So first off, I think as you get a freedom of saying, like, let me throw off some of the shackles of things that might have held me back before, all of a sudden now I'm free of a lot of assumptions. I'd say don't. And part of that is don't keep your same dev workflow. One of the anti-patterns I see is people sprinkle a little AI on their SDLC and go, how come I'm not doing a lot better? Like, some of it is, but I don't feel dramatically better about stuff. So how do we reset the workflow? How do we think about, like, my goal is to get user feedback as fast as possible. That means I'm going to not go spend 3 months doing upfront design and planning. I'm going to iterate quickly. I'm going to learn, was that a good choice, bad choice? Cool, let's go to the next thing. All of a sudden, just like Agile, but even extreme modes of, gosh, I'm going to sit in the room with the stakeholder right now. We're going to build 3 versions of this and see what we like the best. It's amazing. Like, that's a different workflow. We're not even doing the old SDLC. We're just building differently now. And we're building through it, not just even iterations with, you might not even document anything before you start. You might use the results of all of your chat sessions with your tool to generate your requirements when you're done, or it becomes part of your test plan or whatever. Don't just think about, how do I do my current SDLC with AI? You think about sometimes even your goals differently. Maybe even test-driven, right? How do I think of AI first work? Because what we don't want is worse quality. But all of a sudden, gosh, writing all those tests, not fun. Maybe you love writing tests. There's a support group for you. That's amazing. I don't. So, but maybe you can go, gosh, I want to define my desired behavior. What should the system do? All the weird things that could happen. Generate a good test suite and then write code. That is easier than ever. And so you can guarantee some quality in your code. As much as we talk about non-determinism with AI, where, a bunch of things are, I can't predict it, but you can create deterministic things with AI. I can create a deterministic set of test cases that are the exact same every single time. You just have to decide to do that. And that's where we think of your workflow. Gosh, you might not love writing release notes. You might not like producing the documentation or even throwing a bunch of comments. A lot of cases, this is work you're doing as you go. And sometimes the systems are doing it for you with AI. So you're still getting great quality, up to date, always in sync. Things are so hard to do as humans. That part of the workflow might not even exist anymore because it's just ambient. It's literally as you're working, these things are happening. This is all stuff you do today. And we'll talk more about this, but I think some of that workflow is going, who's on my team? Yeah, it might be my team of person A, person B, of course. But person A, person B now have 5 agents apiece working for them. All of you are engineering managers now. We'll talk about that. But when I start orchestrating parallel agents, I tackle different areas. You cover the front end and back end. You do databases. Think about testing. You're a security team. All of a sudden, that workflow, again, isn't some even linear flow. I'm running multiple parallel things that overlap and intersect. Again, on one hand, you can look at that, and that sounds like complete chaos. Or you look and go, this is unbelievable. Like, I, as a person of 1 or a team of 5, can do the work of, in some cases, 50. If I thoughtfully plan this, you're unleashed. Like, the shackles are off. Tell me what you want to do, and it's almost impossible that you can't do it. That's amazing. So thinking about that workflow, don't just do incremental changes. Now's the time to take a meat cleaver to how you used to do things and go like, what is the way I want to do it? And how can I take advantage of that? Let's talk more about that though. So let's talk about agent teams and harnesses and what's that really mean? I'll show you an example of it in a second. You can decide if you hate it or not. When we think of agent teams, fleets of agents, loops, whatever you want to call all this stuff, this is where you start thinking about you can go overboard, and you will go overboard. I'm going to go overboard. But if you think about how do I match what I'm deploying to the task size, really simple task. Hey, I'm trying to build a quick web application with some data access logic. Take it easy. If you have an agent team, it might be a simple planner that thinks through the work and plans some sprints and thinks about the architecture, a builder, coder agent, a reviewer agent. It's great. Awesome. Don't go crazy. Now, when I have a really distributed system, a bunch of very isolated tasks like you would in any software project, then you're like, all right, well, I don't want just a coder. I do want a front end, back end. I do want a research agent. I do want to have a test case agent. I do want a whole QA team, a set of agents that run. And you might have multiple types of builder agents and things like that. Amazing. If it's a really big, complicated system, very, very clear seams and domains of work, but you don't have to start with that. And you don't even need that for some workload. So you think about, how do I deploy sub-agents and teams on my behalf? Where this is more interesting now, look, go back a year, 2 years ago, and we were having at best some chat sessions with an agent one at a time. Generate this function, cool. Update this code, sounds good. Add a test, got it. We've moved away from that to some extent to saying, what are you trying to do? I mean, /goal, modernize this Java 17 app to 23. I'll check back later. I'm not even monitoring the work at this point. I'm just giving you a goal and telling you to figure it out till you get there. That's an extreme version of some of this, but you're seeing some of this work be able to happen. And the hard part for us is our work is switching from, let me think about my tasks, to thinking about what I'm really trying to do. That's harder. Let's be honest with ourselves. It's a lot easier to just pull something off of a backlog, crank on the work for 6 story points, check it in and move on. It's harder work to zoom out and go, what is this thing? Why am I doing it? What does good look like? Like, that's harder work. I think it's more fun work, but the goal-driven nature of this is interesting. So one of the hardest choices you're going to have, not hard, bad, but this a thoughtful choice is, where do I want human in the loop and on the loop? Human in the loop, like I'm involved. I am answering questions. I am the gatekeeper. Or on the loop where it's kind of watching. Things are happening. Where am I just monitoring what's going on? We're going to bias towards being in the loop too much because we're going to say, I don't trust the agent to do that. I gotta keep on that. And you're going to realize you just keep clicking approve on every single one. Like, maybe it's doing fine because I give it the right instructions. I give it the right goal. Let me just see where it goes. So that'll be an evolution, but embracing agent teams is a big part of that. But again, one of those things you have to think about, again, you're becoming an architect of a system, and not the system you're building in some cases, but the system that's building. So how do I think about, what did this agent have for context, for knowledge, for memory over time, for best practices, for data lookups, for references? I got to be a context engineer to think about what's going to take for me to trust this junior employee with doing all of this work unattended? What would it have to know ahead of time? That's real work. That's real design. That's real creative, thoughtful work. And so how do you think about shared state that agents can talk to each other and they shared stuff maybe through an immutable log and a file? How do they have the knowledge they need to have over time? Thinking through context, thinking through how context works between agents. This is fascinating stuff. So let me show you a quick example of how you might go from I have an idea to I have a bunch of agents doing stuff on my behalf. So if you're using something like anti-gravity, which I will use because Google pays me and I like it anyway, is you can do all sorts of things of running agent teams and doing certain things. So for example, I might have a prompt here. And I wrote this prompt, and this is where it's a bit of human on the loop and in the loop. So in this case, I like grill me. Grill me is a great command, and you can use this across harnesses. But this is where the agent's forced to stop and ask me questions, figure out requirements, not just assume a bunch of stuff and get going. So, hey, look, let's say I want to build an agent to keep up with the industry because no human alive, I mean, I'm paid to keep up and I don't keep up. So how are we keeping up on what's happening across the industry? Oh, maybe I'll build an agent that I could just ask on demand for keeping up with competitors or keeping up with industry trends. Cool. And maybe I want to store a database with all the actual competitors I want to look up or topics or things like that. And so what you'll see is I can, in my prompt, say, all right, put a sub-agent that's the engineering manager. They should interview me, come up with a sprint plan. Amazing. Hey, in the loop, they're going to start doing some work. Then they're going to spawn some developers. They're going to do an agent engineer who's going to go build the ADK agent, a quality engineer who figures out all those evals, because that's how we want to test these agents and whether the quality is right. It's not unit tests. It's not, value equals 1. Is it using the tools it's supposed to? Did it follow the right trajectory? Is the response grounded and factual? Those sorts of things. So I can define my own agent team. Anti-gravity can also do dynamic agent teams and do it on its own. Let's say I want to do it on purpose, but the goal is I'm trying to build an agent, right? You got to know what you're trying to build. So let's go take this particular prompt. Does a bunch of stuff. Amazing. And I'll come into anti-gravity and paste that in. I'll use Gemini 3.6 Flash, which shipped yesterday. Let's use the latest and greatest. Actually, I'll use the low one, which is even sillier faster. And so this thing will get to work. Now, the first thing it should be doing is it should be grilling me and asking me questions because it's an engineering manager and it needs to know stuff. So you'll see a prompt at the bottom. It'll ask me some questions. You see it spun up an engineering manager agent, so that's cool. It's getting going. Hey, I'm the engineering manager. Amazing. It's going to ask me some questions. Hey, what kind of industry should I be focused on here? That's great. So we're going to say this will be AI infrastructure. Great. It's going to think about, okay, I got to build an agent to look up AI infrastructure. That sounds amazing. Hey, how should I get this thing? Is it a daily thing? And we'll say it's called on demand. Now you can imagine this is a great way to start with a goal, but then work through what are my actual requirements. Slow down. Let's go slow to go fast. Let's think about what we're trying to accomplish. Hey, for that database, what kind of stuff should be persisted? Well, it's going to be mainly the list of competitors or topics I care about. Now you can imagine this could keep going. You could spend an hour, 2 hours just thinking through those requirements, which is amazing. It's going to go ahead and come up with a sprint plan. All right, first agent, we're going to build this. Then we're going to add the database afterwards. That sounds pretty good. Now I'm in control. I can say, I like that sprint plan. You should change this or move this to here, do this, whatever you want to do, right? I've got all these sort of artifacts. I could say something like proceed just to get going. And so where this should go, it just should be now spinning up other agents, doing other work, engineering managers writing the architecture doc, figuring out the work, spawning my sub-agents here, things like my quality engineer, my agent engineer, doing all of that work. I can see those sub-agents. There we go. This fellow needs attention. What's your problem? He's feeling fairly needy. All right, let's go ahead and approve that. That sounds good. Oops, let me move my little sharing menu here. There we go. And so this would continue. I'm not going to make you watch me build my agent team inevitably. We see it's doing the work. I've got a team of agents. Anybody can do this. You can all do this right now with anti-gravity. It's pretty cool / scary. But it goes and does all that work. The result of this, like my finished version, if I can pull it out of the oven like Julia Child. So my agent's pretty simple. All it does is, hey, it's a researcher. What's an agent? Honestly, an agent is a model, your instructions, and the tools. That's what an agent is. That's all. It's not even a lot of code. It's, My search agent here searches the web. Here's its instructions. It uses the tool, the built-in Google search tool. This one uses the Firestore MCP server and that search agent as a tool. That's all an agent is. And then when you're done these, you can package them up, deploy them. I'll show that then in a few minutes, but that's sort of working where now I'm not coding any of that. I am just steering the agent. It's to me actually pretty empowering because at this point you're just working on my behalf and I'm just steering the work. I think that's pretty exciting.
One quick question, Richard, for
Please.
those that may have not tried using anti-gravity before. Are there any prerequisites? Like, do I need a Gemini subscription of any kind, or is there kind of a free tier that people can get onto?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I have this, I'm using my personal one. So this is just using my Google AI subscription. I think there's a really simple free tier that you can start to use. And then, you'll bump into limits pretty quick. So even having the cheapest Google AI subscription, $20 a month, I think gets you, I think that's what I'm doing. Ton of capacity. You can do a ton of stuff. But yeah, like most of them, there's a basic free limit, I believe.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and it does come in CLI form. If you like the CLI more than the kind of desktop app I'm showing you, it's Windows or Mac and things like that, and Linux as well. So you have multiple modalities. And even the IDE, like I showed you, if you still want to see the code, which is fine, you could also get that full experience in the IDE.
All right. And there's a couple questions in the chat that we'll run a little break. So Dan Cohn is thinking about, if you're a developer and you knew what Sprint meant in Agile development in the hands-on keyboard world, pre-A world, what does Sprint mean in the AI SDLC world? And is Agile Scrum still apply, or should we rethink it, or how does it work? If you had any thoughts on those topics?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't think I'll have a daily stand-up with my agents. That would be awkward, and I would do all the talking. So I don't think I would do all the ceremonies of some of these things. But I think the idea of a sprint, these are still just arguably, ways to scope and gate the work. Does the agent care? No. The agent could just try to one-shot a whole system. For me, I did that on purpose because for me, I don't think it's responsible to do so many code changes at once that I can't digest them. And so I like breaking the work into sprints, period. So when it's done, the size of the code change is enough that I can interpret and I can understand. Right. If I'm getting 30,000 lines of code at once because the agent could just do it all, and it can, I don't know my code in any way. And so I like doing it anyway to force me to cut it up a little bit.
All right. And then one other question. I won't say question mark, but I think it's a question. Let me read it out from Zane. You demoed using the grill me pattern in anti-gravity to force agents to interview you before writing code. How do you teach those teams of agents to write prompts, or maybe not teams, maybe teams of human to write prompts that set tight and effective guardrails without turning the setup process into a bottleneck that defeats the speed of parallel execution?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, obviously some of that is back to that human in the loop and on the loop. You could look at certain cases going, the grill me is just slowing down, it doesn't need it, or I'm just providing the right context in the first place where that's unnecessary. That sometimes grill me makes sense when I'm providing almost nothing up front. And so this is a chance to slow down and ask me questions. If you've written some good specs ahead of time or you've provided good context, some of that's unnecessary. So I think what you have to do, hopefully, as you become someone who's leading within your company of what the practices are, is to some extent, prompts are code. Prompts are an artifact. They get life cycle managed. They should be stored somewhere. There's probably a release process. And so as you look at prompts, some of these you might look at and go, this is way too heavy. Or why am I even saying all this stuff? Some of this I shouldn't be so prescriptive. I should let the AI do it. But this will be an iterative learning process. We're going to overwrite them, then we're going to underwrite them, and then we'll find the Goldilocks sweet spot. But we're going to have to coach people. This is not always natural. Because you're like, oh, maybe I just have to tell it everything. No, you don't. Well, maybe I can just say, go build the web API. That's not enough. Like you got to tell me more about the schema, or you got to tell me about which REST verbs you want to cover. So I think we're going to have to find that sweet spot. But the easiest way I've learned to do this is to do it. And if you don't start doing it, you do not want to be an academic expert at prompts. You want to know that I've tried that and that was too chatty. And you start getting annoyed because this thing is asking you questions every 2 seconds. You're like, leave me alone. Just go build stuff. But you got to feel that. So do not become a paper expert at this. Become a hands-on expert.
No, that's great. And that's all we have in the chat for now. So
Great
let's
questions.
yeah.
Let me do another don't. Don't to skip the importance of day two. This stuff can seem unbelievable for what I just showed you, but all of us know most of this software lives in prod a lot longer than it lives on my desktop. So how do we build the skills, the agents, the workflows, all these pieces? In some way, shape, or form, you need a platform. Build it, buy it, whatever you do. But these things, like skills, should be stored centrally so your team can share them. Agents should be discoverable in some way. The sort of agentic workflows and processes, like those are typically governed best on a centralized platform. Same with data integrations. Like if you don't have a good data management strategy and you think your agents are just going to start calling prod endpoints, you're dreaming, right? So how do I think about, where am I routing some of these data requests through? Is it my API platform? Is it something else where there's real permissions and management and things like that? How do I think about all the audit logs that come out of these agents? Like, is this just YOLO? It's just random structured logs or unstructured logs? ADK, the agent development kit, has actually a built-in, if you want it, export to BigQuery. I think that's awesome. So you can actually put this into a queryable data warehouse where I can do some significant agent analytics on trajectories and results and things like that. I think, think about that. Permissions, my goodness. The worst thing you should do is build a bunch of agents that all share the same system account. You might as well say, I'm going to burn down my company, because you're going to be way over permissioned. You're going to have no ability to audit who's doing what around here. So I'll show you a solution for that in a second. I talked about this a moment ago. I mean, treating prompts, tools, skills as versioned artifacts with a real release pipeline. Not everyone thinks about that, but look, all of these have their own technical debt too. An out-of-date prompt might be worse than out-of-date code. Out-of-date skill that says use an old version of something, that's going to cause a ton of problems. So you got to treat these as life-cycled artifacts, and you really think about, how do I manage them? And then really thinking about test sets, eval sets. How do I manage agents, not only when I run it on my desktop for a quick eval, probably putting it in my CI pipelines. I should be running them constantly in production, because AI systems don't typically fail in production. They just degrade and get worse. Model changes, tool changes, other results can just cause that thing that worked fine when you shipped it. All of a sudden, it's just like, now it's only right half the time. It used to be right 98% of the time. So you need to be running evals constantly in prod, just making sure that the quality stays where you need it to be. So let me show you a quick example of what day two for agents can look like once I ship them. And so let's see them. So I'm going to show Google's Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform. This is growing on me as I use it more and more. And so I can deploy Python agents, not just built on ADK. These could be LangChain, kind of pretty much every Python framework. I'd like us to get other languages added here soon. But that Catch Me Up agent we built earlier, this was that one that helps me catch up on industry stuff. I'll look at the detail of it, because what's pretty cool is, first off, for every agent and agent platform, and to be clear, agents can run anywhere. Agents can run on a VM. They can run in Cloud Run, which is actually my personal favorite. Runs great on GKE. The agent platform is kind of a PaaS, platform as a service for agents. If you just want like no management, everything's wired up automatically for you, that's awesome. So in this case, automatic rolled up telemetry stuff. So I can see, great, I want to see telemetry and dashboards about my agent calls. I want to see what models I'm calling. I'd like to see how the tool calls are and which tools I'm calling. Hey, I'd love to see my token use. Could be super helpful. I'd like to see all my logs here. All of that stuff could be super useful, right? I can see how many tokens I'm using, what's going on here. That's helpful. Really important here, not only revisions, because I might do A/B testing, or I might do rollout of traffic and say, what, this version's 20%, this one's 80%. That's nice. But one of the most valuable things here is that every agent can get a unique identity. Really, really, really important. So all of a sudden now this is a real IAM identity in Google Cloud. I can attach permissions to it, which I'll show you in a second. I'll just show it to you now. So this is that agent I just deployed. By default, it has no access to do anything. And so instead, though, I gave it access to Firestore. Otherwise, it can't call Firestore. I made sure I could use the Firestore MCP server. So I made sure it was an MCP tool user. But this is the minimum permissions it needs. I didn't have to give it root access to my account or anything like that. So it's pretty cool that I can attach something to this identity and take advantage of that. Now, every single agent I deploy is auto-registered in Google's agent registry, which is cool. So I can access these agents. That's pretty handy. I've got any MCP servers available, my account registered here, and then endpoints. This is interesting because the only thing that this agent's allowed to access are registered endpoints. So this is to make sure, hey, I want to make sure it can't go access random internet endpoints if I don't want it to, or random services. You can have a lot of governance and control here that you're not embedding in your agent. You're wrapping it around it in the platform. And so in this case, I've listed first off all the endpoints, just different variants, like the ones for just the region, global, whatever. Here's all the different endpoints. Now, how does this apply? Well, I've built an agent gateway. This is a new service, Agent Gateway. And what the Agent Gateway does is control external access for an agent. What can it access? So I'm applying policies and saying, unless you meet this policy, you cannot attach this service. So for example, if I attach that agent to this gateway, by default, it will fail because it can't talk to Firestore, has no access. Now it has IAM access, I showed you that, but that endpoint is invisible to it. And so what I have to do is add allow policy saying, hey, for Firestore, let's make sure I list it here. There's Firestore. I've said I want to say all agents are allowed to have access to Firestore. Really, really important. So I can attach individual agents or all agents to a specific registry, another agent, an MCP server, an thing. So these sort of allow policies are really, really powerful. I could even say for an MCP server, you only have access to the read-only endpoints, not the write mutating endpoints to like add a database record or things like that. Really, really powerful governance stuff here where I'm actually able to manage all this. So whether you build this stuff, buy this stuff, this sort of governance layer for your agents, I don't see how you're going to run in production without it, without losing your mind, because you'd be always worried about security and access, observability, all these things. I think we're solving something interesting there.
So one thing, while you're switching between the demo or that slide and the demo, a couple questions came in. They seem to be on the FinOps/cost session of it. Maybe that's in day 2 operations. But Himant is wondering, is there a way to track token usage by an individual agent? Maybe one is going crazy and you want to be able to find it and optimize it somehow.
Yeah, so all that data is there. So like I showed you, I can see token consumption by agent. I can see that information. You can set certain, caps and things in some of the platforms, as well as billing alerts and things like that. So yes, and you want to, even be able to test and simulate some of that stuff before you get to prod. But even in prod, you have the data. So you can see if this agent's blowing it up. And maybe you go back and go, wow, we are wasting context, or we're doing so many repeated things when this should just be a script. And instead we're using the LLM to do the work. So that's going to be something we all care about more, because tokens aren't free. They're more expensive now for a lot of people. But yes, that information is available to you.
And then, okay. No, that's great. I think that must have answered Zane's question as well, because he pulled his question off the chat. Right.
Yeah. Well, the next do I'd give you is it's all your jobs to educate your manager. I'm sorry, that's a tough job, but this is an important job, because you know what? Not because I'm going to go. I operate under. You have to lose my trust. So I'm going to start from high trust, and your manager's probably hopefully not an idiot. They're trying to do their best job, but this is a new space. And so when we think about how do we educate our manager, first off, you have to kind of debunk that out of the box 10x myth of just like, hey, I bought GitHub Copilot. How come you didn't ship 50 times the code this week? Like, wait a second, that is not a thing. Where did you read that? GitHub's marketing? That's a problem. But how do we rethink some of that, right? You have to explain and remind them sometimes of, remember where the software time goes, that if you're an unbelievable tech shop, you're coding 30% of your day. And so even if you make that dramatically better with AI coding tools, that's not changing all the work unless you start changing the whole workflow and say, hey, we're rebuilding teams and we're shrinking the number of types of roles so that we can iterate faster. Like, it's possible to do 10x work. It is not possible just by shoving a tool into an org. And so sometimes you have to educate your manager on expectations, because that alone is not going to work. And what is that expectation change? Look, I heard it said, and I love it. Most of our jobs, all the way up to now, has been 20% thinking, 80% execution. That's right. Flipped entirely, right? I'm doing 20% execution because, frankly, I'm just directing a bot to do it. And 80% of the work is thinking. That's hard. Like, that's hard stuff. And so the job is different. The expectations are different. There was data I saw today. Most companies are not freezing hiring or laying people off. but they are adjusting the roles. And we are thinking about what is the work now, because I don't want to do things that agents can do. I want to do only decidedly human work. And so we got to do that stuff together, and you got to educate your manager on what that looks like. And even what does that mean to the apps? Look, you got to explain what evaluations are, because just doing regular testing of AI systems isn't good enough. Or how come this app is acting weird in production when it was fine in development? Well, that's different now when you use an LLM behind the scenes. Or how come this process is different? How come you don't have 50 agents doing the work? There's just things that you should be doing lunch and learns. Invite Googlers in, GDG people in, GDEs in, whatever. Or yourself, become an expert and just start explaining this, because most people just don't know, and it's okay. We're all figuring this out together. Now, a very, very big don't, and nobody knows the right stuff here, but at least I think we know some of the wrong stuff, which is don't pick the wrong productivity metrics. I think everyone does this backwards. Most people do this backwards. So what's the right way to think of what metric? And every one of your bosses, or if you're the boss, everyone wants the magic number that goes, hey, what's the ROI of all this AI and engineering stuff? Because I'm spending $5,000 overages on tokens for every one of my engineers, and nothing's really better. So what the heck? Like, why am I spending all this money? So when people ask me for the magic number, there isn't one. But I think the first thing you should be doing is you start with impact metrics. What are you trying to be better at? If you're saying our customer support costs are too high, we should have more technology systems that help our customers resolve problems on their own faster. Cool. Then if you use AI to make that happen faster, then success and lower the support costs. Are you trying to sell more stuff? And the velocity you get by shipping the software and closing bugs faster and things like that get you there. Unbelievable. You want happier customers? Can you use AI to ship things that they like and things like that? So first off, just what's the impact? Otherwise, it's just a bunch of motion. And so some of the metrics that still can matter, but they might be at org level. Like, I wouldn't report this out to my customer to say, hey, 80% of our people completed AI training. Neat. But like, your products are still terrible. All right, sorry. So no, that's good for the org to look at. Like, all right, that's not bad. How well is the org using the products we've bought for AI, or is no one using them? Okay, look at that. Google has an internal metric that I like seeing, which is how many of our pull requests or CLs in Google change lists or AI assisted, used an agent, fully autonomous. And that's a very interesting curve since the beginning of the year. Again, should we report that publicly? No, but it tells us that we're getting more mature, helpful, right? And is employee satisfaction high even as we're doing all this? So there's a set of metrics that matter. Like, are we making the transformation happen? Cool. And there is a place for all those token maxing AI metrics. Like, it could be useful for a manager, an individual dev, to see how many tokens am I using? How much are they costing? Are we using all the skills? Or are they just sitting on the shelf getting dusty? Like, there are things at the team level. Even when we talk about lines of code or story points, like, somebody can look at that. That's fine. I think we make a mistake. We make that the metric. Like, if you're saying we are crushing it at AI because we're using lots of tokens, you're doing a bad job. Like, that's not how you would measure you're crushing it at AI. You would say we're doing unbelievable with AI because our business has never been better. Our employees are happy. Our customers are thrilled. That is the only, if that doesn't change, then don't waste your time buying AI stuff. And what's the point? So all of these have a place. I just think people seem to start with the bottom one and then find their way up to impact. Start with impact. I talked a little bit about this, but the do is building up the context. Like, this is a huge part of the job, which is not just how do I write the biggest, stuffiest prompt to like, wow, what's grounding look like? How do I ground it and point it to my design specs, my standards for coding, our great requirements, our core data and policies, our security standards? Like, that's an engineering task, not just how am I writing clever prompts. We've moved past that, I think. And as you treat context and as code, but you really think about agent skills, and we'll talk a little more about skills in a minute, but how do I start to codify knowledge? How do I start to distill my knowledge into something where I'm teaching an agent to do a bunch of things? Really, really important there as well. I don't know the right ways to do persistent team memories. I wrote a blog post today on Seroter.com. I just published a few hours ago on how do I even take all those anti-gravity chat sessions and make them shareable to a team. Right now, it seems like everyone just keeps it on their machine. But how does that become a source controlled resource where someone could log into a project 3 months in and go, why did we choose Docker files for this versus packaging it some other way? Or who made the call to use Cloud Run instead of Kubernetes? And wait, why are we organizing the code this way? If you looked at chat transcripts of all these coding sessions across the whole team, you'd learn a ton. And so are there some team memories we should be thinking about? What is the right way? I haven't seen a ton of mature solutions here, but this is something to be thinking about. And then thinking about what is that content at runtime? What's it looking up? Is it using MCP servers to pull things in dynamically at runtime? It's not hard coded into the agent. Whether it's lookups and APIs, maybe it's even dynamically pulling skills. Thinking about what is the context I'm giving an agent so it can do its best work.
And that's a question from Daniel that maybe goes along with the like sharing of context. So we see that we have the agent registry. We can see all the agents in the project.
Yeah.
But things like skills, maybe specs, maybe intents, goals, if there are shared things that we want different agents to have or to share with the team, are there places that you would go to? Are there places in the Gemini suite already or in the works to put those? Or
yeah, Gemini Enterprise has skills. I think it's for everybody, or at least I have, my version has it, that AGF skills in Gemini Enterprise. But more importantly, we did ship a early version of our skills registry, which plays with the agent registry. I think it's CLI only at the moment, coming to the UI as well. And so that you could share and store and version and govern skills. Honestly, for a lot of teams, they are sharing them in Git repos. If I look at Google, all of our agent skills for engineers are stored in our Google 3 source code kind of system as well. And, I think 6 figures of Googlers used skills last week. So they're getting easily reached out to a bunch of people by storing them in shared places. So sometimes you go low tech and jam it in your source repo. You're going to see more mature solutions come out, but there's not a lot of stuff out there yet.
All right, cool.
Yeah, good one. For the don't, this was hot a couple of years ago, even a year ago, 6 months ago, which was like, hey, let me go fine tune a model. Let me even build my own custom agents all the time. Maybe. Or the pattern I'm seeing more often now is, I don't know, can you take a general purpose agent or model and make it do what you want and save some work? Because there's a lot of infrastructure cost of running your own model, even running your own agent on an agent engine or whatever. Is if you're always just running your own stuff, even in a platform, there's complexity, there's security reviews, there's whatever. Sometimes there's value in saying, hey, can I just give it a skill? And if I give this general model a certain set of MCPs and skills and whatever, it does the specialized task I wanted to do. And now all of a sudden, frankly, if I swap Gemini for Claude or I swap it for GLM or Kimi or whatever, it's kind of okay, right? Like all of a sudden, the logic isn't embedded in the app or in the model. It's embedded in the skills that I hand to any model or the MCPs I give to any model or things like that. So instead of giving yourself a versioned big asset, maybe you think about the sort of knowledge things around those things so that the model becomes swappable. And for the team, that's easier. If you go to your team and go, hey, by the way, we're using these 15 agents right now to do our SDLC or even to do our loan processing thing for business, it's kind of rough versus like, no, we just use this loan processing agent and there's a handful of skills we can attach for each stage of the loan process. All right, that might be a little simpler if someone's in Gemini Enterprise and they're just attaching a skill to a particular thing versus finding and calling unique agents. So just think about, that's all. Really the do here is to kind of think about what's the right way to get the knowledge into the task we need to do. If you need to fine tune a model, fantastic, live your life. If I need a custom agent that goes and does my very specific thing, fantastic. But if I can just use look at our managed agents in the Gemini API. It's a general purpose agent that I can shove in some skills and commands and it can go do all kinds of stuff. And now I'm not managing an agent. I'm not managing infrastructure. I'm just making an API call and shoving in some real-time input context, and that's it. So just make sure, again, you're doing the right thing for the right use case. Maybe controversially, I hope not for this group, but I think there's a do on like, please keep writing code. And let me talk about that. I think it's really hard to review what you can't write. Now, to be clear, like, can I write Dart from scratch? Not well. Can I write a number of things? Not as much anymore. But can I read it really well? Could I write it in line with an agent? Yeah, I think I could. So, but as we're moving from being code writers to code editors, I think you want to make sure you're not losing some of the things where we all develop some of that expertise in our language. Where we can look and go, I don't like how you're doing data access here, or what you're doing here is not going to scale because you're storing this in a weird way. You're going to lose that. If you stop writing code at any time, or you stop even going deep into it, just go, I don't even know what this is. I'm watching it actually today in a group I was spending time with. They didn't know how to do something. And it wasn't even, I'm going to go investigate. I'm just going to go ask Claude to do it. I mean, you can, but at some point, are we getting any smarter? Or are we just offloading all of our thinking to the AI? Like, I don't want to. So even if I'm going to ask the AI to do something for me, I want it to explain it to me first. I got to understand this thing, or else my growth is zero and I'm just stagnating. And let's be honest, that last mile, I mean, that last 10% of a 90% completed project seems to take 90% too sometimes. So that last part's where the engineering happens. That's where you're doing some, maybe security and scale work. There's other things where you're taking some of that generated application and going, all right, now we're going to apply some of our specific things and think about that. And so sometimes that's where the passion goes. That's where, like, I'm finishing this thing and making sure it's production ready for my company. That's exciting. But again, you're going to lose that if you're just like, no, I never want to put hands on keyboard again. I'm just going to voice talk to my agent all the time. I think you'll miss something there. You hear this word thrown around a lot, which is taste, judgment, if you will. And so if I'm going to steer an agent and prompt it accordingly, I mean, even earlier when you asked, like, even knowing words like sprint, or knowing words like two-phase commit, or understanding what we talk about with a REST API, like, at some point, if I'm going to prompt this thing right, if I'm going to give it the right direction or precise intent, I got to know what I'm talking about. And if it's just I'm giving it generic goals, I'm going to A, waste a ton of tokens, and B, maybe not end up with what I thought. So this is about maintaining discipline on the craft. We just have better tools to demonstrate our craft. It does not mean we have to sacrifice it. And some of this, let's be super selfish. Like, I don't know. I don't want to just become a potato here who doesn't know how to think anymore because all I'm doing is just, barking at an LLM. Like, at some point, writing code is a thinking exercise. You get physically tired sometimes at the end of it, let alone mentally. But it's, you get a fist pump at the end. You're like, damn it, I figured out that algorithm, or finally got that thing working. That is a rush. That is you're working your brain, you're working your thinking. I don't want to give that up either. So I think, again, if we want to not lose our soul in this, and we don't want to just lose everything to it, retain some of that stuff we really like, while not necessarily just doing all the toil work, but recognizing that there is a value to doing hard things. Now, I'd say don't lock. I mean, this is where you can tell I don't have a quota, even though I work at Google, don't lock into a stack or a set of opinions here. It's a dangerous time to do that to some extent. Your number one job right now is to be relentlessly curious, because every day there's a model. Every day there's new tools. Every day there's new ways of thinking. Doesn't mean you have to pay constant attention, because that's exhausting. We got to pay regular attention to this. I think if you want to be relevant, that's a choice. These are all choices. You can choose not to, but I think you're going to now play defense, and you're going to be dragged along with the industry versus shaping the industry. And so how do you think about being multilingual, even in languages and things? Look, I don't like Python necessarily, but I realized I couldn't write agents unless I started picking it up. And so then now I can do agents in Go, and I'm happier now. But being able to say I'm not constrained by a language, or I'm not constrained even by a single stack, going, oh, that's really cool what Vercel just did, but I'm not a Vercel guy. Who cares? Go try it. What the heck? Like, how do you get to a point where you're like, I want to learn how everyone's doing stuff, and I can bring it back to my favorite stack or my favorite thing? But like, even now, I watch a lot of what Anthropic people do, because they're doing some cool stuff. And if their practice fits in mine, or even I use their stuff, we should be learning from each other's things, other stacks. No one stack is solving everything. No one's product is solving everything. And some of this is pluggability. Look, at the end of the day, I can almost guarantee you a year from now, you will absolutely have a different model in your agent, because we're all deprecating them every 3 months. But there's going to be new tools, MCPs, practices. There's practices I would have told you 6 months ago are a best practice, and now they're an anti-pattern. That's insane. Like, what are we doing? But that's the world. And so how do you give yourself some flexibility where you can, that says, let's not get my whole brand, or I'm not married to an individual model or tool, because I'm going to swap some of these things out. A year ago was all everybody doing Cursor, and Cursor's still awesome. But hey, now we're on Claude Code, but we're also doing anti-gravity and this. And now some of these models are great, and frontier models are good. I'm loving the Chinese models, and amazing. So just give yourself a place where you can explore these things, because who knows what this leaderboard keeps looking like. I mean, Google will stay on top, but otherwise, it's tough to tell. Last couple do's. Look, I mean, rethink what you need to be good at. And what that I mean, what's your learning plan? Like just being unbelievable at syntax of a language, for example. Okay. But I think more importantly, we're moving from coders to programmers to developers to software engineers to product engineers. Are you thinking about the product, the business problem, the domain, the data flows, the architecture, the system, the business needs? That is how you're future-proofing yourself, not by being like, I am unbelievable at C#. That is great. You will have a job for a very long time. That's awesome. But if you're going to keep progressing, these tools are making it easier for anyone to write C#. So it's also going to be like, hey, can I solve problems really well? Can I tackle this? That's different skills for a lot of us, but that's a really valuable skill. And how do I get great at evaluating outcomes? How do I think about verification, testing, auditing? Doesn't mean that's all we do, but get really good at that, because that's a lot of the job, is looking at the outcome of these things and saying, is this good, or do I need to do something else? Communication maybe has never been more important, because that brilliant genius who can't explain what they want is going to struggle mightily in the AI era, because if I can't tell an agent effectively with precision what I need, it's not going to go very well. So am I communicating well to humans, to agents? How am I thinking about leadership? Like, this is a great time for just upping our game. And every one of you has become a manager. What is management? Like, it's taking a problem, deconstructing it into what has to happen, assigning the work to people available, monitoring all their progress, assembling the result, reporting it back. That's a manager. That's what you're doing now with agents, except nobody's training for that. So how do we take that manager training, even as an individual, to think about, how do I not actually get these powerful tools, but do no better work because I don't know how to do that kind of work? That's cool. I've been a manager for 15 years. I'm still very average, but it's a learned skill. It's something you got to work at. The last do, I just find this to be so important, because look, even just stepping out of tech, when people lose hope, that is when they give up on life. I mean, it's, World War II stories and others, is that hope is what gets people through all sorts of things. And when you give that up, that's when people just wither away. And so how do we think about maintaining that hope and our role in this, and think about, for the first time, you've never been able to go from, I have an idea, to I can see it in minutes. That's amazing. Like, that's never happened. We're in an amazing moment right now where even Richard of 10 years ago would just give up on certain projects because it was just like, I can't pour hours and hours into this thing. I can't think of what I can't do right now. That is so freeing and unbelievable. Same with offloading the chores. Some of it can be small stuff. Like a few weeks ago, I had to process something, 48 lines in a spreadsheet. Like, this is the worst. And I just built a little quick agent thing that processed it all for me and loaded it into this tool. And I might have spent the same amount of time, probably, frankly, in the end. I was so much more satisfied by it because I can use it the next time too. So how do we think of offloading so many more of the chores so we can keep holding on to the craft of software development and engineering and building great software? We can do that now because AI doesn't get tired. AI doesn't need a lunch break. AI can just crank through work and the chores that we don't like doing. All of a sudden, the problems you can solve, it's no longer, can I just build the web app? Now it's like, let me throw a mobile on this thing. Let me go change how I interact with stuff. Let me go change the entire interaction pattern. Like, the things that we felt were limits before aren't. And so all of a sudden, what we can do, don't be constrained by yesterday's imagination. Now it's like, let's go tackle it. That's amazing. And just remember, you are the soul of that machine. You're the pilot, right? The AI is not sentient. Maybe I'll be blasphemous that we're not at some AGI moment, but like, it's still a really well-trained machine that does amazing stuff. You're the soul of it. You're driving this thing. Are you using the tools that way? Are you embracing the tools that way? If you do, you're going to be in great shape. But I think there's a lot of ways that this stuff can be super, super exciting and powerful. We just got to make sure we are putting ourselves in the driver's seat of it. And at the same time, not being timid, because now is the biggest transformation moment in technology in the last 40 years. What are we going to do with it? Let's do something big.
All right, I can't imagine that it ended that part exactly at 5:30 Central. Yeah, the maestro. Uh, uh, so hopefully you do have a few minutes for a couple more questions. Richard, I really
Absolutely.
appreciate the presentation. Kenny Khan has a question. He's a longtime uh, site reliability engineer minded guy. Used to work with him at Sabre, and now he's at Lowe's working
Yeah.
on SRE. And all this code coming in from the agents, it's great. On the back end, how does an SRE include production readiness reviews or into everything that's getting built? It's just maybe an avalanche of things coming.
Yeah.
Or do you need to embed some kind of architect or have architects include ADRs into everything that they build? How are you seeing the SREs? What do they need to do, and how are you seeing them adapting to this new world where way more stuff is coming at them?
Yeah, that's the challenge, is if you just make AI better at your coding phase, you really haven't fixed much, because most people don't have the huge problem with code velocity. They just don't ship fast enough.
Yeah.
Or they have reliability issues or whatever. And so unless you rethink the pipeline first off, and then the answer is not going to be let's hire more SREs. It's going to be, what's SRE as a service look like? How do I think about doing these things as skills literally in my build phase, so that as a dev is building it, or even as the code is being generated, it's doing it with those reliability concerns in mind, or logging correctly, or resilience, or whatever, doing that at every stage. So all of a sudden, SRE becomes things that are happening in multiple stages. Yes, again, still people looking at things consulting, but not as a gatekeeper, sometimes as a knowledge distiller. So this becomes things in skills and agents and phases. So as this is going through release, it's being checked, and then prod, it's being constantly evaluated and attacked and assessed to be fixed. So I think for a lot of SREs, it's going to be, how do you distill your knowledge into something useful so that this can be applied earlier and earlier in the process? Because the last thing you want is producing a ton of value and then have it sit for months because it has to go through security reviews, SRE reviews, refactoring. Then we haven't done anything better. So yeah, a lot of this is moving this further left, but doing it not through people, but through expert distilled knowledge.
All right. So the let's see, any more questions? I always have one final question that's non-technical. But if you guys have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. The session is recorded. It'll be put up on the event page afterward if you want to go back and rehear what Richard is talking about. All right, so we do have some questions coming in now. So Pernille, as a current student in my senior year, what do you think someone should most focus on to stay up to date with all the things and not lose hope?
Yeah. I mean, students, as rightfully, I have a son in college in Texas, so I do think about this a lot as well. And like, what are all these roles? What are these jobs? How do you think of things? Hiring out of university is a bloodbath right now. So I know that there's, it's tough to be early in your career. Let's be honest. It's not the same as it was even 5-10 years ago. But at the same time, as you look at this, the ones who are going to win here, from what I can tell, first off, are the ones with a growth mindset. Because if you come in going, here's what I know, hire me because I'm unbelievable. Maybe. I mean, everybody I'm hiring now, and I've got a bunch of open positions now overall, is I'm hiring you for what you're going to learn next. Arguably, what you already knew is interesting, and I want to know you can learn, but I want to know people who've learned how to learn. Like, if I know I can go throw some random new thing at you and you can pick it up and demonstrate it in a week or two, success. If it's, hey, I got to go, into a cave for the next 12 months to learn this random thing you just asked me, like, that's going to be a bad fit. So have you set yourself up that you learn well, you know how to use these tools. I wouldn't graduate college, for example, going, like, I am crushing it as just a front-end engineer. Okay, what else? Like, okay, if I do front-end, but I'm capable in some back-end stuff, or I understand the disciplines of testing, or hey, I've looked at product management. So get your horizon wider. I think I've seen some people come out of school going like, yeah, I've just spent 4 years learning Rust. Amazing. And you will find a job in that. There's just not as many as, hey, I also am competent and capable in other areas and very curious about X and Y and Z. So just keep a wide horizon, be T-shaped again, like be deep in something. If you're just nothing but shallow, not great. If you're I-shaped, I just think that's a dangerous place to be for whether you're 30 years into your career or 30 days.
All right. Hostamol has a question. They saw people debating in the non-tech community using skills.sh plus chat versus agents plus HITL, which do you see differences in those? Did you see those end up going to production? I don't know what HITL is.
Yeah, I'm assuming human in the loop, I'm assuming. But
right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, for production, look, there's people who are using straight up just skills and chat. That's a lot of what Gemini Enterprise is going to be for non-technical users and even technical users. You're seeing that in all sorts of platforms. It's still a successful way versus, again, even in Gemini Enterprise, you can have agents with human in the loop steps, which are great. Both are going to be valid. There's going to be probably a third or 12th option that we're not even talking about just because this keeps evolving so fast. But
right.
For most of these, it's going to come down to the guardrails you have in place and what kind of testing you have in place. But I'm seeing both happen. Both models happen.
All right, cool. And then Zane and Eileen are thanking you for a great session. Srinivas is building using Gemini. Does Google evaluate and allow people that are builders to place those things in the Google Marketplace? They have a solution?
Yeah, I mean, there's the regular commercial ISV marketplace for products that make their way to that. Our agent registry in a cloud account is specific to a customer, so that you wouldn't randomly place your agents for everybody to use or things like that. But even now, I'm excited anyone can build Android apps to go to the Play Store. People can, there's more ways to share than ever. But I don't know of a place to say if I build something with Gemini that my skill or my custom agent becomes available to everybody. I haven't seen that kind of marketplace yet.
Right. And then Mike has Kenny has a funny question, but he wants a raffle. There's a book raffle. If you stick to the end, Eugen has five digital copies of a book from Pact the publisher. But Mike, so Kenny wants a raffle for my shirts, but there's no raffle yet, Kenny. I'll got to figure that out. But Mike has a question about maybe those without a tech degree, trying to get boot camp certifications. So those people that are trying to make that switch to tech, is there just too much to learn, or
Yeah.
What do you think, Richard?
It's a good question. Hey, look, Mike, I'm a political science major from UC San Diego. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. There's and I threw myself into tech post-college and did some software stuff, but I always still have inferiority complex because I didn't write operating systems when I was 18 or anything. But to some extent, I think the liberal arts major is in better shape now than the computer science major, because some of this is, again, how well do I communicate and understand certain topics? How well can I deconstruct problems? How well can I decompose complex issues? Because increasingly, it's not going to be, we're always going to need programmers. We're always going to need coders. But at this point, you with intent are almost as dangerous as a coder with an IDE. So if you know how to use these tools, you're golden. Invest in things like anti-gravity, even as a non-technical user. Use Google AI Studio. Use some of these tools. Use Lovable, which is exploding as a vibe coding platform. You using those tools. Now, would you, with a non-technical degree and no hands-on, for example, go into an engineering leadership role? No. But is there plenty of roles in companies now, especially in different business areas, not just in IT, but in marketing hires people who understand how to build with their tools, people in HR and legal, even in technology teams. So you getting familiar with these tools and frankly, not apologizing for the non-tech background, but taking advantage of it, I think that's awesome, because we're going to need people who can build things for everybody, not just people who build things for the geeks.
And Richard's poli-sci. I'm English pre-med, so another non-technical degree. Eileen has a question. Given the latest surge in postings for forward deployed engineer positions, what is the outlook on career tracks for engineers in the future? And for those who haven't heard of forward deployed engineer, Richard might be able to explain it better, but it's people getting embedded into business units or parts of the company to help maybe those non-technical people figure out how to automate what they're doing, best use Gen AI and AI in those scenarios. So
Yeah,
it almost seems like it would be a burgeoning thing, like lots of work to do.
Yeah, it can sound like a consultant plus plus. To some extent, it is. I think the difference with FDE than maybe even traditional consultants and things like that has been that you're arguably an arm of engineering, in that you're sitting there and you're also feeding back what you're learning about product back to improve the products those customers are trying to use and deploy. Now, your typical FDE isn't charged for. Google has a lot of them now, and they're not something we charge for. We just embed them in accounts, but they're meant to not just be going in there running workshops. They're also collecting feedback, making sure that the products are improving. And that's why it's a forward deployed engineer. You're almost an engineer sitting on site with the customer, seeing how they're using the product, helping them realize it, not because the products are hard, but because change management's hard. And figuring out how to use these things in context and build up your context and do it with security right. That's not easy stuff just because it's complex. It crosses different teams and things like that. So it's an interesting role. You're going to see more of them. Some of these are glorified consultants. It's okay. Just rebranded, just like a lot of people who called themselves DevOps engineers were just sysadmins who got a cool title change and new business cards. So happens all the time. It's okay. But yeah, it's an exciting role. You're seeing at least a lot of the big companies hiring them.
All right. Larry has a question. What are the XYZ you're studying these days? So what fill in the blank are you studying, or what should somebody study? I guess it's to both of us. Mine's kind of non-technical because I just started a treasurer position for a nonprofit. So I'm trying to get the ins and outs of QuickBooks, but for technical, I'll leave it to Richard.
That's exciting. Yeah, so every day I publish what I've read for the day on my blog, Seroter.com. So just every, whatever articles I've read for the day, pieces, just so you know what I know, because I just love paying attention right now. When I think of what I'm learning mostly about practices as much as I'm also, getting hands-on with certain tech things and, publishing things about loops or programming language things. But I'm paying the most attention to how are people working. Like I'm watching a group here today in our San Diego office. A customer flew in and we're helping them go to prod with something, but just seeing like how they work. How do the dynamics change with these tools? How do you change team sizes? What roles change? And roles are changing. What roles you don't need anymore. Like those factor in. So the thing I think I'm studying the most these days is what are smart companies doing to work differently, Google included, but also our customers. I think that stuff's fascinating because that's the really hard stuff. You can't buy 6 units of AI and do better work. You got to change how you work. And so Google can't transform you. You can only transform with Google stuff. That's different. That's a distinction. Patrick
wants to know, what does a chief evangelist at Google do?
Yeah, my parents don't understand it either. That title was only, I told my boss I wouldn't take it unless he promoted me, and then he rascally promoted me. So, yeah, there used to be 2 chief evangelists. The other was Vint Cerf, who invented the internet. So it's like him and then me. So he's retiring, so good for Vint. But yeah, I mean, basically I do a lot of spokespeople stuff, talk to customers a lot, do press, do analysts, do social media stuff. But my day-to-day job is running our developer experience team here at Google and engineering teams and things like that. So I just get a fun, goofy title that I get to take advantage of.
Nice. All right, we've done some of this answer already, so you might have to repackage some of the things, or maybe have something else in the back. This will be the final question, non-technical. It's a career question. Usually the speakers are pretty experienced in technology and in working at working in the tech industry, or just working in general. You did see we do have some young people online, or older people wanting to make switches. Anything you found in your career, or your current thinking on career advice to give people that you'd like to share that you haven't been shared already, or maybe repackage some of the things you've already said?
Yeah, I mean, I had a career coach that gave me a couple of pieces of advice I still think about a lot. One of them is never run away from a job, only run 2 jobs. And I think if you leave a job just because you're trying to, flip off your boss and go like, suck it, I'm just going to go leave, that doesn't go well. Like, you have to be motivated by what you're going to. And so just be careful. And there's jobs where I've just wanted to rage quit. And like, that's the wrong reason to leave. Leave because you found something better that you're excited about. So don't take a backup job. You're not going to have the motivation. And then the second one, which I think about all the time, is don't take a job that's going to be there in 6 months. Meaning, if you're going to leave your job and do something else, it should feel like it's a unique thing for you in that moment. And if you've looked again in 6 months, the same job would be there. Maybe not the same company, but the same type of work. So I typically leave for jobs that feel like they won't be there 6 months later. And that's worked out okay for me. I've taken demotions in the last 3 jobs changes I've done, from a VP to an individual contributor, VP to individual contributor. But I think they all had higher ceilings, whether I detected that or not. And it just felt like those were different jobs that were going to be unique and help build out my skill stack. And so I pursue those things. But yeah, those 2 things have stuck with me and have guided me decently so far.
All right. No, that's great, Richard. And again, thank you for taking the time to evangelize to us on all things. Not all things. There's too many things Google to evangelize in a short amount of time. But for bringing this Gen AI topic, helping us think through how we can be more productive, but then what are the pieces that are let us be hopeful with this technology, and be able to maybe envision where we can make ourselves better and harness these tools to do things we weren't able to do before.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hopefully you leave a little bit inspired and realize that we are, it's up to you what happens next. Just put yourself in the driver's seat. You'll be happier.
All right. A little round of applause. Everybody's on the chat applauding in their own way. So thanks again, Richard. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Love seeing you here. Connect on LinkedIn or stalk me on X or send me a chat anytime. I'm glad to have you here. Be good.